Remembered.
Seven Ages of Man by William Shakespeare. I'd like to start this off by reading the poem. All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man, in his time, plays many parts. His act being 7 ages. At first, the infant, mewling and puking in the nurse's arms, and then the whiny schoolboy, with his satchel and shining morning face, creeping like snail, unwilling to school, and then the lover, sighing like a furnace, with a woeful ballad made to his mistress's eyebrow. Then a soldier, full of strange oaths and bearded like the pard, jealous in honor, sudden and quick in quarrel, seeking the bubble reputation even in the cannon's mouth. And then the justice, in fair round belly, with good caprone lined, with eyes severe and beard of formal cut, full of wise saws and modern instances, and so he plays his part. The 6th age shifts into the lean and silvered pantaloon, with spectacles on nose and pouch on side. His youthful hose, well saved, a world too wide, for his shrunk shank and his manly voice. Turning again towards childish treble, pipes, and winds in his sound. Last scene of all that ends this strange event history is second childishness and mere oblivion. Sans teeth, sans eyes, sans taste, sans everything. Very deep. Now, we get into the meat and bones of the presentation. The title describes how all men go through 7 stages in their lives: infancy, schoolboy, lover, soldier, judge or justice, whichever one you prefer, old hermit, and then a second infancy, which is basically just them getting ready to die. Other. It's a student list. Just go. We have a video. This is a biography on William Shakespeare.
Click the link. Click the. Hold.
William Shakespeare was an English poet and famous playwright, and is widely regarded as the greatest writer in the English language. Although a great deal of mystery surrounds Shakespeare's life, it is documented that he was born in Stratford-upon-Avon in the centre of England and was baptised in 1564. He was probably educated in Stratford in the local grammar school, and then there is no record of him until he married Anne Hathaway in 1582. The couple had 3 children, and then 7 years passed, known as Shakespeare's lost years, where there is no documented record of him until he was noted as part of the London theatre scene in 1592. In 1592, Shakespeare's work was criticised by another playwright, which documented his career, although it is unknown when he began writing. Shakespeare's plays were performed solely by the Lord Chamberlain's Company from 1594, of which Shakespeare himself was one of the actors. After Queen Elizabeth I died in 1603, the new king, James I, issued a royal patent to the company, and it was renamed the King's Men. The company built a new theatre on the south bank of the River Thames in London in 1599, called the Globe, which made Shakespeare a wealthy man. His plays began to be published in 1594, and by 1598 his name appeared on the title pages of the works. He continued writing until at least 1613 and died in 1616, survived by his wife and daughters. He is buried in the Holy Trinity Church in Stratford-upon-Avon, and his epitaph warns of a curse upon anyone who disturbs his remains. His works consist of some 38 plays, 154 sonnets, and several other poems. His plays have been translated into every major modern language, and his plays have been performed more than any other playwright in history.
Context. The poem was read in As You Like It, Act 2, Scene 7, where Jacques is talking to Duke Sr. about how everyone is going to be busy, how everyone is going through the same exact play life, just as he and Senior are, and how the play is just one of the many acts that man must go through. Structure. The 7 Ages of Man is set up in a narrative format. So, the poem describes how everyone's lives are like a play, and how we all go through the same cycle. And it also talks about how we continue to mature until a certain point where we start to regress back to our childhood. What act do you think your parents are in?
Let's see, your dad.
Your parents are that old.
What would you say, Sam?
I say A. No, isn't your mother an attorney? Yeah, mother.
Yeah, Mom.
She works at like Walmart.
No,
How?
I thought she was like an attorney or something.
Is that everyone?
Alrighty. Go ahead.
It seems a lot of you said judge. I'm sorry.
I mean, well, like 70.
Legacy. The most famous line in this poem is no doubt all the world's a stage, which is the very first. This line is so famous that it's actually spawned a poem of its own of the same name. I read this poem, wasn't very good. Figurative language. Symbols. Bearded like the pard. And I didn't know what pard was, so I looked it up, and apparently it's a panther, which still doesn't really make sense. And it's important because similes, they're like right. Consonants. Shrunk shape. Because actual right. Sound devices. Sound devices are important because they allow an average person to enjoy poetry without having to spend time, looking into like a really deep meaning. And it's all like dumb fun. Draw a picture of what you think you will look like in the judge or justice act.
Because we gotta get second. We gotta get second.
Yeah, we're a little short on time. I think we got one more presentation to do, so
Skip through everything.
why don't we skip through the pictures?
Just go. Seven, just go.
You want to do the other one?
We're short on time. Hit the page.
Okay.
You just do the other one tomorrow.
All right.
I'm so proud of you guys. So hard to.
Who's that one? Scroll down.
Look at mom.
What is that even? Did you just scribble? Julian? No. I didn't say childhood.
Severin, look for mom.
Does she have red hair or is she dying?
Seven.
Nice to know each other.
Go.
Severin.
Go.
Look for Ladero.
Severin, look for mom. It's amazing.
Who drew Obama?
Yep. He ends up like, wow.
Tone. I believe the tone of the poem. It's okay. I believe the tone of the poem is rather monotone and dull because Shakespeare's Jack Reese's character is described as such in As You Like It, which was the play where this thing came from. I believe the theme is that our lives are a pointless and predictable cycle. And I'm doing this partly because of Jack Reese's character throughout the play. He's kind of described as a character who's just kind of bored, upset, depressed with his life. And because the poem is just basically telling you, this is how your life is going to be. Personal reaction. Personally, I never liked Shakespeare or his poems. I think his stories are overrated, and his poems are just a mess of words from Old English that are too convoluted for most people to understand. Listen,
I'm like pleasing a gig of video today.
what do you guys think of Shakespeare's poems? Please go into detail.
Is this the last slide?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm gonna say who's the next person. Who's next?
Please don't do no one word answers. Oh, Justin. Understand.
You guys do know he made up his own. I was wondering, but
Very
Alright.
intelligent and meaningful.
Who's Shakespeare?
I think they'd be nice if I could read to you. Preach. They're interesting to people who can
wait, it takes
understand.
me 7. You keep my notes.
Oh well.
I get no points because of your.
7 kicks the ball. What did you say, Linnell?
Mine said seems legit.
Seems legit.
Alright,
Alright.
finally.
Oh.
Thank you.
That was 7.